Hey y'all, we have just about a minute or so before we start the live stream. I'm just going over some stuff here real quick to make sure that I can be seen and heard. We're going to start the live stream about 2 minutes or so after 4. So give me just a second so I can make sure that everything is doing what it is supposed to do. And then we'll jump right into the live stream. Okay, it looks like that's doing okay. Perfect. Let me turn my sound down. Let me just try this really quick to see if it's doing what I want it to do. And like I said, we'll start in approximately about a minute. Let me just run along and check these technical things out real quick. I don't think it's doing what I needed to do. That's okay. Oh, I see what I did. All right, so let's do yes, and I'll hit share. And it's not doing what I want it to do, but that's okay. Oh. Hey, maybe it did do what I wanted to do. Let me go back here and hit share screen. Oh, yes, it is doing what I wanted it to do. Perfect. Perfect. It's just a little bit of a delay. Great. Perfect. Now, if I could, I don't know how to zoom in, y'all. Y'all gonna have to bear with me on that. But other than that, I think we're good to go. Yeah, I just think my screen is a little wonky. Oh, I have to do this again. I have to remember to do that, and then boom. Okay. All right. Let me just stop sharing the screen. I'll get back here. Okay. Let me just set that up so I can keep an eye on what I am supposed to be doing. All right, everybody. Welcome, live stream viewers. Thank you so much for being here today. Welcome, replay viewers. Thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time and hanging out with me. So today we are going to talk about The Conductors by Nicole Glover. This is her debut novel, and it is phenomenal, to say the least. I really had a good time with this book. And we're going to talk about a few of the themes in the book, as well as the overarching message. I was about to say method, but I digress. Okay. So, like I was saying, this book was written by Nicole Glover. It is her debut novel. So let's get into the synopsis, and I'll tell you a little bit about Nicole and the characters and the plot, and then we'll go from there. So, Hetty Rhodes and her husband Benji were conductors on the Underground Railroad, ferrying dozens of slaves to freedom with daring cunning and magic that draws its power from the constellations. With the war over, those skills find a new purpose as Hetty and Benji solve mysteries and murders that white authorities would otherwise ignore. In the heart of Philadelphia's 7th Ward, everyone knows that when there is a strange death or magical curses are causing trouble, Hetty and Benji are the only ones who can solve the case. But when an old friend is murdered, their investigation stirs up a wasp nest of intrigue, lies, and long-buried secrets. And many a mystery unlike anything they've handled before. With a clever, cold-blooded killer on the prowl, Hetty and Benji test their magic and placing their lives at risk will discover how little they really know about their neighbors and themselves. So, like I said, this book is Nicole Glover's debut novel. Let's talk a little bit about Nicole Glover. I really think that her background lends itself to writing such a really good reader-focused story. So Nicole Glover works as a user experience researcher in Virginia. She believes that libraries are magical places, because they are, and that problems seem smaller with a cup of tea in hand, because they do. Um, Her life outside of books includes bicycles, video games, and baking the perfect banana bread. The Conductor is her debut novel. She can be found at NicoleGlover.com. So, Nicole Glover is a giant nerd, a super huge nerd. After I read the book, researching to prepare for this live stream, I found out a lot about her. Number one, she loves Sailor Moon. In a lot of her interviews, she said that she loves astronomy, and she does. But I found one in particular where she loves Sailor Moon. That is the reason why the characters in her book can do this constellation magic or celestial magic, is because she wanted to spend her time talking about one of her favorite things, which is astrology and astronomy and Sailor Moon. I think it's also where she might have got the idea to use sigils in the way that she does. So you'll remember in the book, there's a lot of times when they will make the sigil for the crow or Aries or Libra, and a big giant image, almost a holographic image, similar to the one right here on this book. You see the crow in the background, would actually get up and perform whatever spell the caster asked it to do. So if they call on the archer, then the archer's arrows will shoot at different people. And if they think, stop that person from running away or stop that building from catching on fire, then that's what the celestial constellation does. So I thought that was really interesting, that her love of Sailor Moon got us these great books. And these books are so good. In fact, they have been optioned and bought as scripts by Queen Latifah's production company and Jim Henson's production company. We don't have any word out as of yet as to what these deals are going to look like, if it's going to be a movie or a TV series or something like that. But man, oh man, I hope that this does get turned into something that we can all watch on the big screen, because I had a phenomenal time with this book. Let me put it down. So let's talk a little bit about the setting, and then we'll jump into the characters. So the setting takes place in Reconstruction. So Reconstruction lasted 12 years after the Civil War. And setting her novels during Reconstruction, the 12-year period after the Civil War, Glover felt drawn to an era that might be merely a page or a paragraph in history textbooks. But for Black Americans, she says it was a decisive period of good and bad news. And that is actually what happened in the history of Reconstruction. We made a lot of gains. There were a lot of Black people running for not only local offices, but federal and national offices. We had a lot of senators and congressmen. But then also, after Reconstruction, we experienced a huge backlash. That's where things like Jim Crow started to get put in place, because people saw the gains that we were making and they wanted to put a stop to it. So they did. And so that's the part where she says that it's a decisive period of good news and bad news. So millions of formerly enslaved people left the chains of bondage. Glover's novels flash back to Hetty and Benji's formative work on the Underground Railroad. Black politicians were elected to state and national office, but racism remained rampant and Reconstruction ended. Many of the gains Black Americans achieved were systematically dismantled. So basically what I said in a fancier way of saying it. Part of the reason that Nicole Glover says that she made this book fantasy versus a historical fiction is because it gave her a little bit more wiggle room to tackle some of the bigger questions. Here it is. So she says that magic helps us deconstruct histories, politics, and social issues. One of the things that she really talked a lot about in this book, we're gonna focus on a lot of the different themes in the book. Let me just go on and talk about some of the themes here real quick. So some of the themes that were present in the story were classism, colorism, the past, respectability politics, family, and relationships. And we'll discuss these briefly and give a little bit of definition so that we're all on the same page. But where is it? There was one that I wanted to talk about in the setting. I think I put it over here. where she was talking about the reason why she used the magic and said it so that it was like everyday kind of magic. Magic isn't hidden. The people who can use magic are not hidden away somewhere. She wanted it to be an everyday type of experience so that we're all aware of magic, but it depends on who's using it and how they're going about it. So let's just jump into the idea of classism. Of course, there was racism too, so we can talk about that as well. The white people in this story, in this universe of Nicole Glover's, they're sorcerers. They learn their magic through books. They are the ones who can yield wands. Black people are not allowed to own wands. They're not allowed to learn sorcery. In fact, teaching Black people sorcery is like a federal offense. And in her story, in her universe, the Black people who could use celestial magic when they were enslaved, they weren't allowed to use that magic. They wore collars that prevented them from actually using their magic and would sound a clarion call or a loud gong if they ran away or they were using magic, and their kidnappers, if their kidnappers didn't want them to use their magic, or if their kidnappers forbade them from using magic, which they did, then the collars would heat up, cause a lot of pain, and sound a really loud gong, basically torturing them for using their God-given gifts. So again, there is a hierarchy of people who don't understand celestial magic, often say that it is wild and unwieldy and unyielding, and only heathens can actually use it. And I'm trying to find this note that I took. I'm sorry, I have a ton of notes because I always take a ton of notes when I read, because I want to, make sure that I am giving y'all the whole gist of the stories. Anyway, so she does talk about the reason why she used categorized this book as a fantasy novel and not a historical fiction, because she said oftentimes people then end up focusing more on getting the history right versus using that new environment to talk about social issues and whatnot. One of the largest things that she does in here is, here it is. She says fantasy allows space for ideas to breathe and to be approached. Put history in front of anything, and the concern is to be factual or educational. But by placing fantasy in a story, it allows people to turn off the critical side and focus on themes and other messages. And if done really well, readers leave knowing a few facts. And I think she really accomplished that in this book. One of the things that she does in between the chapters is she will have different interludes. One thing I wanted to point out is you don't get this when you are listening to it on Hoopla, is each chapter has a sigil. Let me see if y'all can see that. There it is. You see that? So this is one of the interludes, and that is the Andromeda sigil. And so what she'll do is she'll go from the present in one chapter and then tell you a little bit about their past as conductors on the Underground Railroad. She'll explain some things to catch you up to speed so that you understand why people are reacting to Benji and Hetty the way that they are. So I really like that a lot. That's a way to tell you about the past while advancing the story as well. Again, I think that her job as a user experience research really helped make this a fun read for those of us who are reading her work. She assumes that we're very smart. She assumes that we're going to catch all these little clues if she just provides them, and she gives us a little breadcrumb. She assumes that we'll be able to follow it and figure out who did it. And I didn't figure it out. I love mysteries because I always want to try and figure it out before they tell us. I didn't figure it out until she had it. I was like, oh, Oh, that's who did it. I love it. I loved it so much. So that is one of the things that she did in choosing to make this a fantasy versus a historical fiction. I thought it was a really good idea because one of the things that she also explores a lot of is what do you do when you cannot call the police? Who do you call? Hold on. Who are you going to call? It's rethinking the role of police in mysteries. Now, for a lot of mysteries, the police are the main characters. In fact, when you call the police, when they show up, everything's going to be better. It's all going to be great. The heroes are here to save the day. That's not the case for everybody. That is not the case for a lot of communities in this country and abroad. And so she wanted to explore who did you call when you had a problem that needed some help, you needed the police for, but you couldn't call the police. One thing that Nicole Glover has said is that she had no idea what restorative justice was before she started writing this book. So she didn't write that a book about restorative justice because she had no idea what it was before she started writing this book anyway. And a lot of people don't know what restorative justice is either. It's something that it's deep and it's layered. I wouldn't say it was complicated, but it's nothing that you can just be like, this is what restorative justice is, because that's a simple definition, and it's a bigger deal than that. But basically, it's a way for people to handle situations and get justice without involving the authorities. Sometimes you can involve the authorities, but they're not necessarily jail time, not necessarily a court system or a punitive justice system. It is a way to come up to get justice for the victims outside of a federal mandated way to do it. That's basically what I'll say. Again, that's a very, very simple definition. Honestly, there are tons and tons of books on what restorative justice is and what it means. And that's going to look different depending on who you are and what actually happened. But anywho, this is what she wanted to talk about. If there's a stock list of characters that you must have in a mystery, the police are on that list. From classic mysteries to modern police procedurals, they're generally called in when murder is afoot. The roles police play shrink and grow, depending on who the main character is. Anyway, but they always come in the end. So that is what Benji and Hetty are. They're basically the police for the people who don't have any. Excuse me, y'all. Any other options, because the police aren't going to come and help. And if they do, them showing up is not necessarily the cavalry coming in to save the day. So anywho, I really thought that was incredibly interesting, and that whole take on who do you call when you cannot call the police. You call people who are trusted to give you justice and not take the law into their, well, that's not right. I was about to say not take the law into their own hands. They're not Batman or anything like that. It's not vigilante justice or anything like that. But they are helping people, putting a stop to things in their neighborhood, in their community, because nobody else is coming. And so someone has to do it. And people already trust them because of their work in the Underground Railroad. Okay, so speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about some of the characters. So I'm going to try and share my screen. So y'all give me just a second, because there we go. I think I did it right. Hopefully I did it right. Let me go back and look. Oh, I think I did. Let me come in here and click on this. Nope, it says I'm sharing. Perfect. Okay. I'm sorry, y'all. All right, so let's talk about the characters a little bit here really quickly. Okay, so Hetty Rhodes. Hetty is a dressmaker, and she's one of the best magical practitioners around, and she's also a gifted storyteller. She uses stories to entertain, distract, warn, and even get out of a spot of trouble or two. Okay, so that's Hetty. She's the dressmaker. I don't know if y'all can see her very well here. Let me see if I do this, if you guys can see her. So this is Hetty here. I think I did it. Yes. Okay, so this is Hetty Rhodes right here. All right. So now let's move on to her husband, Benji. This is perfect. Okay, good. I think I got it, y'all. Let me see if I can't do this. Boom. Okay. So this is Hetty's husband, Benji. And Benji works with metal. He also is a celestial magic user. He's a blacksmith as well. So if there's one thing Benji likes is taking things apart and figuring out how things work. A blacksmith by trade because it allows him to tinker with things. He's the restless sort of genius that is good at a number of things because of an interesting in learning all sorts of things. His weapons of choice is a hammer, although he prefers to avoid trouble at all with a few well-placed spells. So that's Benji Rhodes, Hetty's husband. They also were a part of a brigade of people, a freedom league, if you will. And so they often have help with their cases. And one of the people who helps with their cases is an embalmer, and his name is Oliver Gardner. And this is Mr. Gardner right here. So, all right, so let's launch into Oliver. Although Oliver complains about everything, he is always willing to help Hetty and Benji with their cases. Because of his expertise with dead bodies as an embalmer, he is mostly self-taught and always learning something new, especially with the bodies his friends bring him to study. His weapons of choice is knives, all sizes and shapes. So that is Oliver. And let's see. Oh, one of my favorite characters is one of Hetty's friends. And we'll get into the different characters and how they are portrayed in society. But one of Hetty's friends' names is Penelope Jones. Let's see. So this right here is Penelope Jones. She's a great lover of plants. Penelope's home is filled with magical, medicinal, ornamental, and poisonous plants. She's a skilled herbalist, and she's also a bit of an alchemist, and she likes to experiment with potions. As Hetty's best friend, Penelope has a front row seat to all of Hetty's most interesting stories and adventures. Her weapon of choice is naturally poisoned, followed by potions of a rather explosive nature. And Penelope, let's see, there's another character. This is Benji's, not Benji, but Oliver's. I don't know if they're married. I know that they are a couple, but I don't know that they're married. We'll say man friend. We'll say companion, since I'm not 100% sure if he is, if they're married or not. They're definitely in a relationship. So this is Thomas Green. Always here to lend a listening ear. He's the person everyone looks to for help, which he always gives without hesitation. His weapon of choice is a baseball bat because he doesn't want to break a rolling pin on someone's head. So Oliver was inspired by not Oliver. I keep saying Oliver because that's his husband, Thomas. Thomas is a cook because Nicole Glover was interested in stories of enslaved plantation chefs like Hercules Posey and James Hemings, who cooked for George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, respectively. George Washington, hold on a second. There, we'll stop sharing. George Washington actually sent Hercules to France to learn how to become a pastry chef, and he would loan him out a lot as well because he got so good at it, and he was a renowned baker and pastry chef and everything else. So I forgot one person. This is, let me go back to sharing my screen. Sorry, y'all. So this last character, this is Darlene Needham. And Darlene and her husband, wait, hang on. Here we go. She's an artist. So Darlene is an artist and a teacher. She's the voice of reason and an older sister figure to Hetty. She recently adopted a baby to raise with her husband. So Darlene seems to have retired from her life as an agent in the Vigilance Society. That's the name of the society that Hetty and Benji were a part of when they were getting people to freedom. So it seems like she gave up her life as a former agent in the Vigilance Society, but there's room for doubts. Her weapons of choice is a pistol for its ease of use and the discreet nature as well. Okay, so Darlene is here to keep a balance between Penelope and Hetty in their friendship to kind of create a trifecta, if you will. Okay, so that is the cast of characters. One of the things that brings this in is that we are able to get a well fleshed out story of the rest of the society through these people. So one of the themes that we talk a lot about or is discussed in this book is class. Benji and Hetty are not poor, but they're not in the upper echelon either. So they're probably like low middle class. Also, because they have a very untraditional relationship, they're bucking a lot of respectability politics. Some of their friends don't want to associate with them as much as they used to when the Vigilant Society was more active during slavery. Part of that is because these people are trying to move up in society and forget their past. They don't really want to talk about slavery. They don't want people to know that they were enslaved because there are some people who in Philadelphia were born free. They never were enslaved anyway. So they are carrying a shame, a stigma of being formerly enslaved. And they associate that with Benji and Hetty because they were conductors on the Underground Railroad. And so some of their friends, in an attempt to move up in society, are moving away from Benji and Hetty because of the past and what they represent. Another thing is one of the main driving things for Hetty as a character and her character development is that when Hetty got herself free, she broke her collar and she was on a plantation with her sister, and her sister and her got separated when they ran for freedom. And Hetty's never stopped looking for her sister. It is the one thing that she is it's the one thing that she is going to care about, even at the expense of everything else, even at the expense of relationships with people who are in her presence. And you see how it ends in the book. We find out at the end of the book that Hetty's sister has actually passed away. And it ties into who the murderer was and why this person was going around killing people anyway. So I really like that a lot because oftentimes when we're discussing the history of formerly enslaved people, we don't talk about the stratification of class and how that still kept some people, the formerly enslaved, very, very poor, and others were able to climb up and move amongst the ranks of society. Another thing, another sub-mystery in the book is colorism. When a character asks Hetty to find out about her sister. My sister is gone. She is missing. I cannot find her. This is a very light-skinned Black woman who is passing as white. Now, the woman actually talks directly to Hetty about this and says it is not her fault that people don't know what they're looking at, and she wants to keep living the life that she has. And so if they're going to let her be white and not question, she's not going to correct anybody. This woman uses a wand. She practiced sorcery, and she does move freely amongst the Black community. She is comfortable there. White people do not know what they are looking at when they see her, but Black people do, which is another reason why she's looking for her sister who is darker than her, but her spitting image. And if anybody makes that connection, then Miss Wand Wielder won't be able to wield her wand. And I forgot that lady's name, and I don't care because she wasn't passing to access a lot of the white privileges for the benefit of her people. She's just passing because she could, and she didn't want nothing to do with her sister. And I try not to judge people who have passed, but in this case, this woman really did not care about her sister. She cared about herself and her lifestyle. She didn't want her sister messing it up for her. I've known people to have passed. Y'all know I always will never miss an opportunity to talk about my grandmothers because I love them and I bring them up as much as I want. But one of my grandmothers definitely did pass. She passed to buy land. She passed to get jobs and different things like that. One of the things that people don't talk a lot about is people who are passing for white often cannot be around other Black people. They have to constantly live a lie. They cannot necessarily be around other Black people because they're often afraid that someone's going to call them out and then their secret will be blown and then they'll get treated like other Black people, and that's not what they want. So it can be a very hard, lonely life for those people who are doing that. Especially if they don't have anyone to share that secret with. So, and this, of course, relates back to the past. One of the things that comes up in this book over and over again is that people are trying to find loved ones who were enslaved since that time period is over. And oftentimes it creates problems in their current lives. For instance, Oliver and Thomas's relationship. When we meet them, Thomas is down south. He's down south because he is visiting his wife and his daughter. Oliver, who stays at home, did I say Oliver or Thomas? Thomas is the one down south. Oliver is not. Oliver is miserable without Thomas. He's drinking too much. He's grumpy with all his friends, but Thomas had to go and check on his wife. They talk about in the book how oftentimes Black people were forced to make babies. They would pick a Black man for his personality type, physical characteristics, and then they would pick a Black woman and make them breed, basically, because they wanted to make more slaves and they didn't want to pay for it. So some of these unions were not by choice. Some of them were by choice. Of the ones that were by choice, when the people got free, sometimes they were on different plantations. People's names changed, their last name changed, and so they could be looking for someone, let's say Hetty Rhodes, because she was looking for her sister. Her last name wasn't Rhodes, though. She got married and changed her last name. So if her sister was looking for her, which she was, it would take longer because she's not looking for whatever Hetty's last name was. I forget what it was before she got married to Benji. And also, Benji picked a different name. Benji's last name, Rhodes, that wasn't his last name. He got rid of his kidnapper's last name and picked Rhodes. So that just complicates the matter. For people who were in the Vigilant Society, trying to find people, putting ads in newspaper, looking for loved ones with no real way to know if these people were alive or dead. And this gets discussed later in the book when we find out what happened to Hetty's sister and how she too had been looking for Hetty and she found her, and it just took a long time. Just remember back then, mail wasn't always delivered. The Pony Express hadn't been invented yet. We didn't have the postal service as we know it now. So mail did get delivered, but it took weeks and weeks and weeks, and sometimes it went the roundabout way. And if you didn't have the person's correct last name, it was very hit or miss a lot of the time. So, anywho, so that's the characters. The whole plot of the story is that prominent Black people are coming up dead. They have a curse sigil on them. And these sigils are taught by people, but celestial magic isn't written down. So they knew that whoever did this had to know the victim. This gentleman is the one that got killed was somebody that Benji and Hetty helped to escape to freedom. Now, when he got there, he wasn't the best of people. He got his money through gambling and lying and stealing and cheating, and being a slumlord. So he owned a lot of businesses and buildings and things like that, but he did it in an underhanded way because he was trying to climb up into society and get as far away from his history as being a slave as possible. And he was going to do it by any means necessary. He ropes Benji into this as well, because he gets into Mr. Jackson gets into financial trouble, and Benji is always willing to help someone. And since he helped this man escape to freedom, he is still, wanting to help him. So he gets roped in and starts boxing and doing underground boxing matches. He doesn't tell Hetty, and a lot of people keep these things a secret from her. And the reason why this is going on is because, first of all, Benji and Hetty got married as a partnership, as a type of convenience. They got married because so people would keep the rumors down about them going off and investigating with each other when they would go and take people to freedom. It was just a lot easier to explain to people why they spent so much time together and were often alone for weeks and weeks, days and days, end on end. So they basically got married because they respected one another. They would support each other in their magic. Benji never talked down to Hetty, and to keep respectability politics at bay. In the book, if you'll remember, we start to see when Hetty is falling in love with Benji. Right now in 2022, a lot of people have love matches and get married for love. But for people who were formerly enslaved, they didn't always have that type of freedom, that type of privilege. Also, these are people who just came out of something very traumatic and were used to loved ones, family, friends getting snatched away from them at any given time, and there was nothing they could do about it. So I also think part of the reason why it took Benji and Hetty a while to realize that they actually did love one another is because they were constantly waiting for the shoe to drop, the other shoe to drop. They didn't want to get too attached because something bad could happen, and then they would feel stupid for falling for one another. That happens a lot to people who have experienced trauma. It's a very, very common type of thing. Let's see, what else are we going to discuss? Let's see, we've talked about class. We've talked about colorism, the past. We talked about respectability. Family. So one of the main themes in here is family, found family, blood kin relationships, and what that means, and the links to which people are willing to go to protect said family. So when Benji, after slavery ended, Hetty started living with this black preacher and his wife, and she would rent a room from them. They were like her parents, mother-father figure, which is very common in enslaved times for people who are not related by blood to bond and try to form familial units so that they could get through tough times together. So they found family, basically. So she was living with them for a while until her and Benji got married. And these are people that she respects and loves, and they respect and love her and really want to see the best for her, best things out of life for her, because that's what they think she deserves, and they're right. So anywho, Benji and Hetty were not allowed to use their celestial powers to their advantage during enslavement. They're cautious about how they live after enslavement as well, because bad things are always happening, and they just want to be very prepared. To some people, it made Hetty hard, and Benji was just very kind and patient and very much understood Hetty. Also, I think he respects her quite a bit, and that is why he allows her freedom, because it works better when she is able to do what she is best at, which, besides dressmaking, is celestial magic and thinking outside the box. He knows that she's good at this, so he just lets her do what she is good at. Um, and he's learned to trust her with his life because of the intermissions, or taking us back to the interludes. We learn so much about their path and their job as conductors on the Underground Railroad, and why he trusts her with his life and whatnot. So let me see. There was something that I wanted to remember to talk to y'all about. So let's talk about familiar relationships and the conclusion of what happened in this book. So, like we were talking about, because people were enslaved, and a lot of times their families, mothers, children's, brothers, wives, husbands, were sold onto different plantations. And a lot of people were still looking. They would put out advertisements in newspapers, and seeking for this loved one and whatnot. Sometimes people had past to reconcile with, like they're getting married and their newfound freedom in Philadelphia, and up pops an old wife or somebody who was looking for their husband. The husband's not looking for her anymore. He hopes she's dead because he's trying to move on with his life. And those things cause upset and problems. So the issue is that some people would never know. You wouldn't know if your spouse was alive or dead, or where your children were, and they might not know that about you. And so a lot of people didn't want to be honest about that, because, again, they're trying to move away from the stigma of being an enslaved person. And so that means cutting off a lot of ties, cutting off a lot of people. That was not the case for the person who ended up being the murderer in this book. No, ma'am. He was upset. He was upset about having to live in Philadelphia, listen to people sing the praises of Benji and Hetty, when his wife was supposed to be on one of those trips in the Underground Railroad, and Benji and Hetty couldn't make it. It was too dangerous. She ended up getting caught because she decided to run anyway. She ended up getting caught and murdered and put on trial for it. So because of that, her husband kind of lost it. He lost his grip on it. Just like Hetty was doggedly and determined to find her sister, regardless of all the other relationships that she had in her life. She was no longer pouring into those relationships because she was focused on this one thing, this one dream, this one impossible thing, most likely, because it had been about 10 years. She finally decides to kind of just let it go, so that she can nurture her relationship, because she's starting to realize that her friends are no longer inviting her places. She's actually lost friends because they keep telling her, you keep looking for your sister who's most likely not even alive anymore, maybe not looking for you, and you won't even take care of the relationships that are right here in your face. So that was something that Hetty had to reconcile with. I also thought it was a very clever way of Nicole Glover to bring those kind of issues to the forefront. We often do not hear about formerly enslaved people in this country, the problems that they had to deal with, not being able to find loved ones because of name changes, or family popping up that you didn't necessarily want to pop up because you didn't want to get married to that person anyway. You were forced to have those kids that you didn't want anyway. Now you have a new life. Now you start it, and here comes this person talking about, hello, I'm your wife, or hello, I'm your husband. I found that really, really fascinating. Another reason why Nicole Glover set this in Philadelphia is because there is a rich, rich history of Black people in Philadelphia, Chinese people in Philadelphia. People could even get married interracially in Philadelphia. This was long before loving. And they outlawed all that stuff. For a long time, people were interracially getting married in Philadelphia. In fact, in one of the scenes in this book, The Bicycle Race, there is a lady called Kitty Pryde. She would be considered biracial. She is biracial. She definitely would be considered biracial by today's standards. She had a white mother and a black father. And she was trying to get into these racing clubs. Like in the book, they talk about how expensive bicycles were, but it was also a class marker. If you could afford to save money to get a bike, then that puts you in the upper echelons because that meant you had extra money left over when a lot of people didn't. Again, a war had just ended, the Civil War had just ended. And so there wasn't a lot of extra disposable income around for everybody unless you were wealthy. So anyway, Kitty Pryde was this biracial black lady who wanted to race. And they would let women race, and she saved up money and she bought her bike. And this bike club was like, well, we don't let Negroes in. And then some people were like, well, we don't actually have a rule that say they can't be in. And she was like, besides, I'm half Negro. And so they ended up letting her in. She won a lot of races. She was also a seamstress. She actually sewed these kind of pants that you could button and it still looked like a dress when you weren't riding your bike, but then you unbuttoned it and they were actually trousers that didn't get in the way of you racing. And so she won a lot of races this way. And there were some people who really liked the side saddle English bike. No, it wasn't side saddle. It was just an English type of a bike that made you ride a little bit more prim and proper. So they were pushing those type of bikes because they really were just tired of this little black biracial girl beating everybody and being the best at all these bike races. Sadly, Kitty Pryde passed away. I believe she was 24. She had kidney disease. She got that from her dad. He also had kidney disease and he died young as well. Anywho, I ride a bike. That's why I know so much about Kitty Pryde, and also costume people talk about her a lot as well. Costume people on YouTube. So we talked about family. We talked about relationship. I still didn't tell you who did it. I did allude that it was a man. But I didn't tell you who did it because just in case you did not get a chance to read this book or finish it before today, I highly, highly recommend that you do this. The book is available in audio format on Hoopla. And of course, we have it in print format right here at the library. The other thing that I want to talk about real quickly too is she already has the second book out and we already have it. It's called The Undertakers. This is good too. This is available in audio format on Libby, or you can just stop by the library and pick it up as well. I'm going to put those on a display for fantasy novels for July, so you can stop by and pick those up if you are so inclined and so interested. The narrator for these books is Bonnie Turpin, Bahni Turpin. She is one of my favorite voice actresses, narrators. As some of you may remember from earlier in this year, she read Justina Ireland's the book about that little girl in it, Ophi's Ghosts. She did that. She did Justina Ireland's Dread Nation, the whole series. She read those. She has also read a lot of Alyssa Cole's books. When No One's Watching, she did that one. She did all those Reluctant Royal books. Anyway, I really love her. She's a wonderful voice actress. She does male voices, masculine voices very, very well too. And she can act. So it makes for an enjoyable reading situation as well. I really liked a lot of the history that Nicole Glover put in this book. You can tell she did her research. There's a scene where Hetty is trying to reconnect with one of her friends that she has alienated and thus has alienated her as well. And they bring up this scrapbook. Oftentimes, Black people kept scrapbooks. They would cut out articles out of the local newspapers and then add other things to it because oftentimes the local newspapers left things out or they were just biased toward Black people. So they would keep scrapbooks, write little things in them to put more emphasis on the story or tell their side of the story. Oftentimes, too, their friends would help them with scrapbookings, adding recipes, funny stories, jokes, medicinal remedies, growing tips, gardening tips, things like that. Really, really fascinating history of Black Americans back in the day. I didn't know that we did scrapbooking stuff either. But then I started reading this book and learned a lot about it. Really, really awesome, really fascinating. The other thing that I liked in this book is, especially as it leads into The Undertakers, the second book in the, what is she calling these? Murder and magic novels is what she's calling them, is the history of Black people, African Americans, Black folks in this country being morticians. Is one of the few professions that we could go into unencumbered and make money at. Have a good living, have something to have, what is it called, generational wealth, and leave your family. It's still one of the more popular traditions for Black people, professions for Black people in this country. Still to this day, making money being a mortician is a stand-up career in the African American community. And unlike some of the other ones where we were allowed to thrive, like Pullman porters and things like that, it hasn't gone away, because people are still dying every day, and somebody has to help them transition onto their next life. So anywho, I really, really hope that y'all enjoyed the Conductors as much as I did. I forgot, and not one time did I say at all to sign up for my newsletter. Y'all sign up for my newsletter. Sign up for the newsletter so that I can so you can get a lot of this good information. I'm sorry, I'm looking for something to, hold on one second. Here we go. I'm going to post the link so that you can tap it. Okay. All right. Let me just put this in the comment section real quick. Here is the link to the newsletter. Go on and click on that so that you can get the next, all the information for the next book that we'll be reading. And the next book that we're going to be reading, the live stream is going to be on July the 21st at 4 p.m. And the next book we're reading is going to be called Written in Bone. Well, it's not going to be called that. It is called that. Written in Bone. Hidden Stories in What We Leave Behind by Sue Black. This book is available in audio on Hoopla. And of course, you can get the actual physical copy free with your PCCLD library card. Let me read a brief synopsis. I say brief, child. Okay, I'll make it brief. We'll go fast. Internationally renowned forensic anthropologist and human anatomist Dame Sue Black recounted her life lived eye to eye with the Grim Reaper in her acclaimed memoir, All That Remains. During the course of it, she offered a primer on the basics of identifying human remains, insights into the fascinating processes of death, and a sober, compassionate understanding of its presence in our existence, all leavened with her wicked sense of humor. In Written in Bone, Sue Black builds on her first book, taking us on a guided tour of the human skeleton and explaining how each person's life's history is revealed in their bones. Sorry, there's a glare. Hang on. Which she calls the last sentinels of our mortal life to bear witness to the way we lived it. Her narrative follows the skeleton from the top of the skull to the small bones in the foot. Each step of the journey includes an explanation of the biology, how the bone is formed in a person's development, how it changes as we age, the secrets it may hold, and is illustrated with anecdotes from the author's career, helping solve crimes and identifying human remains. Whether recent or historical, Written in the Bone is full of entertaining stories that read like scenes from a true-life CSI drama, infused with humor and no-nonsense practicality about the realities of corpses and death. So, I promise you, not all these books are about ghosts and dead people and murder and mayhem. I was looking at the book list the other day. Yeah, it is. It's a lot. It's historical fiction, and ghosts and hauntings and whatnot. There is a theme. I'm sorry, I didn't realize it until I started looking at it real close. I'm like, oh, I guess I do have a thing for murder mysteries and ghosts and whatnot. But I really like these kind of books, especially forensic anthropologists, because they can tell you so much about a person's life based off of their bones. There are some forensic anthropologists who have, speaking of enslaved people, because it does tie into this, who were excavating plantations, and they could see somebody was literally worked until they couldn't work anymore. Their ligaments snapped off of their bone, and that's how hard they would work enslaved people. They on the work camps. I shouldn't have said plantation. We're going to call it what it was. It was a work camp. Plantation makes it sound idyllic and nice, and there's people sitting on the veranda sipping sweet tea. No, they were work camps. These were people who were kidnapped, and they literally worked them until the ligaments snapped off of their bones. There is forensic anthropological proof. This isn't anything I'm making up. And in fact, you can read this book by Sue Platt, Written in the Bone, and she'll talk about it too. I haven't read it yet, but I know she's going to talk about it because that's how I learned about it too. Is some forensic anthropologist was excavating a work camp in America, and they were like, oh my gosh, they literally worked this person until the ligament snapped off their bone. And the ligament would be like the stretchy part on your vacuum cleaner. If the vacuum cleaner belt breaks, then the wheel won't turn into vacuum. Those ligaments actually are kind of like big rubber bands in your body, and your legs can't work if one of those are stretched or bruised, or if it snaps. You have to wait till that thing heals. And back then, nobody was going to do a surgery. It'd be cheaper to probably buy another slave. Anywho, I digress. I do know a little bit about forensic anthropology because that's what I studied in college. Anthropology, not forensic anthropology. But we had to look at bones and things like that. So that fascinates me because even in death, you can still tell a story. And I think that's fascinating. Okay, to wrap this up, thank you all so much for coming and listening to my discussion of The Conductors by Nicole Glover. I really hope that y'all also check out the second book because it is phenomenal. It's a really, really good mystery. We're learning about the volunteer firehouses and that kind of history. It's so fascinating. If you love history and you love fantasy, this is the perfect mashup for you. You're going to learn little bits and pieces of history throughout this book about plant lore, about embalming, about classism, about the formerly enslaved and all the different societies and groups that they were formed to help each other progress and prosper. There's so much in here. I'm scratching the surface. Do yourself a favor and read the books, listen to them, come by and chat with me about them. I'd love to hear what you thought about these books as well. We have a few things, a few announcements before I go. I have a few minutes. So I wanted to let you guys know about our summer meal program. So the summer meal program is free. Pueblo is offering free brown bag meals for children 18 and younger. It's going till July the 29th. That happens here from noon to 12:30, Monday through Friday at Lamb Library. They're also participating at Barkman, Lucero, and Rawlings as well. They start at Barkman at 11:45 to 12:15. Again, here at Lamb from noon to 12:30. At Lucero from 11 to 11:30, and also at Rawlings from 11 to 11:30. They're doing books in the park all the way till the 29th of July, and that's Monday through Wednesday in the Ray Aguilera Park from 12:30 to 1, and Fairmount Park on Thursday and Friday from 12:30 to 1. Also, the lunch program is going to, for District 70, is going to July the 21st. It's at Liberty Point Middle School at 11:30 a.m., Vineland Elementary School at 11:30, and South Mesa Elementary School at 11:30. You guys are also doing books in the park until the 29th of July. Those times for the Ray Aguilera Park are Monday through Wednesday, 12:30 to 1, and again Thursday and Friday, 12:30 to 1 in the Fairmount Park. We're also doing teen and tween hangouts here at Lamb ages 9 to 18. Downstairs Wednesdays at 4 p.m. They have fun. They have snacks. They have Dance Revolution and crafts and Lilo and Stitch and all kind of fun things. So come and hang out and have a great time. The last thing I want to leave y'all with is the Waves of Change. It's a tween and teen summer art shows. Artists 9 to 17 are welcome to imagine, design, and create 2D or 3D artwork. Works will be on display at Lamb Library during August. The submission deadline is the 25th of July by closing time. Opening night is going to be on August the 11th. Here's a flyer. I'll be posting this on the Lovely from the Library Facebook page as well. But if you want more information, please call or come by Lamb Library. Okay, I think that's it. Again, thank you so much for watching the live stream with me. Remember to share this live stream. Sign up for my newsletter. Click that blue link in the down drop if you are interested in getting ahead of the game and getting all the discussion questions and the themes. You'll want to sign up for that newsletter because then you get more lovely. Yay! Who doesn't want more of that? I know I do. Thank you again, replay viewers. I really appreciate y'all making the time to find me and enjoy me. Please, if you have any questions or comments, don't think that because you're watching the replay that I won't see them and respond, because I will, and I do. And I appreciate y'all for hanging out with me. I will see you here next month on the 21st for our live stream. In the meantime, please keep coming by the Lovely from the Library Facebook page. I do discussions weekly on whatever book we are reading about. I tie in with read-alikes. And I also make announcements about different programs and to-go kits and things that we have here at Lamb Library. Y'all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you very soon. Bye. I'm smizing with my eyes. See? Smiling with my eyes. See y'all later.